Yo, what is going on YouTube? I am Germ here. Today we have some news coming out of the LEC that we're going to be talking about. Obviously, MSI is now over. Now all of our sites are set on the regular seasons of both the LCS and the LEC. The off seasons and off-season moves and roster changes and everything are for the most part done with, or for the most part winding down. We're coming to those last couple moves where maybe like there's a couple teams filling out a last couple of players, but for the most part we're all done. But hey, that doesn't mean there can't still be a couple of moves right before things get kicked off. I think the LEC season starts on like June 17th, June 18th, June 19th, somewhere right around there, so we're about 3 weeks away from kicking everything off, and keeping that in mind with some of the stories we're going to be talking about today. I guess the first, not the biggest, craziest, anything like that story in the world, is the future of Zanzara. He is going to Misfits Premier. They say raise your troll pillars, welcome no one other than the Trundle King himself, Zanzara, as our new LFL jungler. Overall, I think this is a good pickup. Zanzara is a older player. I want to say he's like 26, 27, something like that. So this isn't a guy that I necessarily think is going to, have some kind of late resurgence in his career or anything like that. Overall, I think he's a middle of the pack to lower tier jungler in the LEC. I think you could argue, he might just be, in fact, like a good ERL jungler rather than necessarily an LEC level of jungler. He's interesting. He's okay for content. I think he was good for Astralis as far as like content and branding and stuff, but on most teams, I think he'd be overall, like kind of boring, kind of lame. I don't know. I appreciate at least him giving it a try. Again, I think he's like okay personality, okay in content. I think he's okay on the Rift, but overall I think it should be a good pickup for Misfits Premier. Obviously the ERLs are still a really, really big deal over in Europe. At the very least, maybe he can help make some of those players better, help coach him up, help be a leader, mentor, that type of stuff for him. And best case scenario, maybe he ends up cracking it back into the LEC eventually. I don't think this is going to be a guy that Misfits is going to be able to like sell off or anything like that. I also don't think this is a guy who's ever really going to be starting over Zlatan or anything like that, but maybe Zlatan decides to leave, maybe he gets sold off, who knows. Zanzara, that is kind of the future for him. But the bigger news, the bigger story we are talking about today is the LFL top laner update for Misfits Gaming. This has been kind of an ongoing story for Misfits. Not a lot of teams made changes in the LEC in this mini offseason, but Misfits in the top lane was one of those. We heard a while ago from Wooloo that Misfits were shopping, or not even shopping, but just considering other top lane options other than Herit. It wasn't 100% certain that they were going to be moving on from Herit, but we knew they were talking to other top laners. We also know that they at least talked to Summit about potentially joining their team. Obviously, some people thought that might be a really good idea. Some people thought that might be a really bad idea, teaming up the LCS and the LEC MVP. Obviously, it didn't end up happening. Eventually, Misfits decided to promote Aggressivu, and it sounded like here it was going to be going down to Academy, but then we got this. Over the offseason, I don't know why I said Aggressivu. I meant Irrelevant, not Aggressivu. Aggressivu is on BDS Academy, I believe, or now he's a starter for BDS. But anyway, over the offseason, Irrelevant was promoted to the LEC, and here it was moved to the LFL. Initially, here it was going to be our LFL starter, but due to personal reasons, he expressed his wish to go back to Korea last week. As teams resumed training this week, we mutually agreed to part ways so that he could go home. So that's kind of cool by Misfits. Obviously, here it didn't really want to stick around. Maybe something was going on. Maybe he just wanted to be closer to home, family, friends, whatever, instead of playing in the LFL. We don't know for sure. Yeah, they did allow him to be able to go back. They let him go. And that's cool because it does have a negative side and a downside for Misfits here. They said we are sad to see him go. We want what's best for him, and we wish him the best of luck in the future. But now that means Irrelevant is going to have to assist the LFL team in the official matches until they have secured a replacement. Obviously, that got some people upset. They're like, hey, this is a shame for pro player integrity. Irrelevant is going to make his debut in the LEC as a rookie, which means a lot of pressure, and you're going to force him to play and scrim with the LFL team also, while you could blatantly find someone to fill the role in the LFL. And hey, I mean, he makes some fair points, some fair arguments there, except for the fact that Deficio does chime in and say, hey, week one rosters for the LFL locked some days ago, because the LFL actually starts this week, so rosters have been locked, and at that time they assumed here it was going to be playing, so Herit and Irrelevant were their two top laners. They didn't have a need or a reason for a third top laner or for any other players because they were all ready to go. They had their rosters all lined up. So in the meantime, there was nothing they could do. Even if they could go out and sign somebody or whatever, they weren't going to be able to play in the LFL this week. But I do get what the guy's saying. Yes, there is a lot of pressure. You want him to get as much scrim time in practice with the LEC team as well, and then also in the downtime be able to maybe chill out or watch VODs or do other things, not have to scrim with the LFL and play with the LFL. Deficio does go on to say that Irrelevant scrims with the LEC like normal and just steps in on the off days to scrim with the LFL. The other days they're testing out new tops for the LFL team. So I think that's cool that they are testing out a bunch of other LFL tops. Doesn't seem like this will be a long-term issue because, again, worst comes to worst, you can there's a bunch of players who I'm sure would love an opportunity to play in the LFL, even if it's not their long-term option. But I think there is maybe an argument to be made about, hey, on his off days, you're having him scrim with the LFL. Why not give him off days, like a normal LEC player would get, because the LFL at the end of the day, it's just an ERL. The LFL regular season doesn't really matter that much, or shouldn't really matter that much, especially when potential LEC players like mental or stress or whatever's on the line. But then there's also the other argument of, hey, this is a young player who needs a ton of experience, who needs more games under his belt and all that stuff. So maybe it's not going to be bad for him at the end of the day to scrim a little bit more, practice a little bit more, play a little bit more, especially when Misfits isn't really projected to go to Worlds. It's not like they're going to have a crazy long season ahead of them or anything like that, but this did rile some people up. But there is even more to this story. Things get a little bit crazier. This is from Wooloo. He says a private document showing all the LFL teams was recently shared. So we have all these rosters, and obviously on here you can see, Irrelevant was on here, not Hear It, and that's kind of raising some questions. We also have Vander for Misfits Premier. Kind of some weird stuff going on. Some unexpected stuff. So both Team BDS and Misfits have used this offseason to promote academy players. Again, Irrelevant is going to the Misfits roster. BDS promoted Aggressivu. That's why I was thinking about him, because he's involved in the story. And Erdot, I don't know how you say that, also reported by Upcomer. This meant that both teams had to adjust their academy rosters because in the LFL they have a veterancy rule. If a player has played more than 50% of eligible regular season games in a professional league, and at least 2 out of the last 3 splits, they're considered a veteran. An ERL team cannot include more than 2 veteran players. So, that means it's essentially like the import rule. There some restrictions on the lineup and things you can do. So Misfits had Hear It. They were going to have Zanzara, and they were going to have Vander, and they're all veterans, so that wasn't going to work. So they decided to move Vander to their coach, which meant they brought in support Dreamer Ace. But now, obviously, with Hear It gone, this opens up a slot. That means they can move Vander back to support. That means they don't need Dreamer Ace anymore, and that means that Dreamer Ace ends up going to BDS Academy, instead of Erdot having to, play the Academy games as well. So it just led to a whole bunch of different roster shuffling all at the last minute, which was kind of crazy, which was kind of weird. Again, with Dream Race not being able to play for Misfits, he was available for BDS. Ultimately, BDS decided to go with him. They were looking at other people like Beansu. So I guess that is the bright side of this whole thing is that, Limit comes up and he says regarding today's news that he isn't going to be playing. It sounds like he didn't get too screwed over because it sounded like BDS Academy was already considering other supports and stuff. It wasn't, maybe Limit was an option, but it seemed like even if they didn't get Dreamer Ace, that they were probably going to end up going with Beansu or something like that. Who knows for sure. But yeah, Limit just kind of talks about, hey, it's too late in the offseason for me to even find another team. Probably not going to be playing this split. Who knows what's going to happen. And maybe this sucks a little bit because Limit has been a decent support at times in the LEC. Another guy that I don't think's ever really been amazing, and I think some people have definitely overrated him in the past during some splits, some games, some weeks, whatever. I think he's an okay player. Again, this is probably another guy who I would consider like a high-level ERL talent more so than like a really solid LEC level talent. But I do think he deserves to be on some team, and it sucks that at least as of now, Limit does not have a team going forward into the summer split. I'm sure he'll be able to find someone in 2023 or maybe even sometime during the 2022 summer split for some kind of ERL or something, because he would definitely make a lot of teams better. But yeah, whole ton of crazy roster shuffling, but at the end of the day, I think the biggest news is the fact that Irrelevant is going to be playing Academy and LFL. Oh, he's going to be playing LFL for the next couple weeks. Obviously, the LEC doesn't start for a few weeks, so this isn't going to directly conflict with the LEC and the LFL ever, but it is making him have a little extra work to do on his off days, and then he's having to play LFL games as well. I don't think it's going to end up being that big of a deal. Probably the biggest deal of the whole thing is the fact that Hear It is gone. He's all the way out of Misfits, so even if Irrelevant sucks, they don't have the option of bringing up Hirt anymore, so this does get a little bit riskier, but it is cool to see some of these talents like Irrelevant, like Aggressivu, like Erdate coming up to the LEC, and it'll be cool to see how they do. But that is pretty much it for this video today, guys. Let me drop a like if you did enjoy it. I would appreciate that so much. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about this whole story. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions. Subscribe, stay up to date on all my latest content. Hopefully catch you guys in the next one. But until then, peace.